Hello.
Hi there. I am Keith.
And I am Dale.
And we are Renjeaux, and we listen to cool albums. And today, Dell, what are we going to be listening to today? Yes.
90125.
That's the one. Yeah. We know this one.
I saw a video of them doing this live at that time, back in 83 and 84. And they did that key change. They played it out for a while.
Nice.
The key change and everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean,
neat.
it's kind of reminded me of The Police or Kate Bush, where they add the little tag at the end and they continue as its song is fading out, they're adding new parts. And so, yeah, it totally seems like a song they could extend for quite a while.
So the band at this point was Alan White, the drummer, Trevor Rabin, the new guy,
and the guy, keyboards and guitars, wrote a bunch of these songs.
John Anderson came in actually later in the project.
Right. Yep. Because
Tony Kaye came in, disappeared, then came back.
Right. And then disappeared again.
Of course, the solid guy, Chris Squire, actually, to me, this album was Chris Squire and Alan White and Trevor Rabin.
Right.
The big was the main heart behind this album.
Yes.
And then with Trevor Horn.
Right. On the desk. And
Trevor Horn, the producer, was a big part of this as well.
Oh, yes. Well, on that song, especially the sampled horns, the sampled orchestra, all the clean ass production, he had started off, I guess, in the Buggles, and then worked with Yes with Drama, their previous Yes album, which I think me and you agree is the best Yes album ever, which we will get to at some point later. We were just talking about that. When are we going to do Drama? But this, so he continued on with them only in the producer role for this album. And
he was a big part of the construction
sound. Oh yeah, from the very beginning. I guess it took about a year for them, at least a year. I guess Trevor Rabin had been working on these songs for several years.
A few of them, there was a lot of the big ones, like Owner of the Lonely Heart was definitely his to bring in.
Yep, right.
In fact, this one, here's a little background on him. In '81, he actually signed a deal with Geffen to do some of his solo work, but actually, with the original intention was in the form of Asia. Now we know Asia was Steve Howe and Jeff Downes coming from the last Yes album,
right,
to form Asia, and
coupling with
Rabin was going to kind of be a part of that somehow. But he declined that because due to the lack of chemistry, from what I read.
I see.
And then and the deal with Geffen fell through. So a guy named Ron Fair with RCA listened to his demo of Owner of a Lonely Heart and said that was going to be a game changer. So he was so he offered him an album deal.
Okay.
But he turned that down because at that point I guess through who or anything, I forget who it was, he came across that Chris Squire and Alan White were trying to form a band, Cinema. And he wanted to work with them.
Yes. So they were actually Cinema for a couple of years, right? Kind of while they worked on this. And it wasn't until pretty late in this recording project that they finally decided, I think it was even after they invited John Anderson to come sing for this album, that they at that point they still were going by Cinema, but then apparently a couple of A&R people heard John singing and said, "Oh well, this is Yes, man." So
Beck Anderson didn't get involved until I think so. That was about the beginning of '82 when he met up with Chris Squire and Alan White, and it wasn't until about middle of '83 that John Anderson got on board.
Right. Yeah, this was released in November of '83. So yeah, it was sometime after John came on that somebody was like, "Hey, man, come on, let's just face it. Now it's Yes. Now that John's singing."
Here's a weird side note that I either forgotten about or something. Squire and White were going to create a band with Jimmy Page and Robert Plant.
Oh, right.
XYZ. And Plant didn't like the lyrics in the songs, so he decided to not get involved with it. And I heard that there's actually on some of the later releases of Yes, who we really didn't get into much, so I haven't really caught them in depth, but some of those releases from the XYZ sessions are on those. that they actually had Jimmy
Became
Page.
some later.
Yeah, Jimmy Page actually played on. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, like later albums in the 80s?
Yeah.
Like later Yes albums?
I think
okay.
Keys of Ascension or something like that.
Okay. Keys to Ascension. Yeah. Well, that's, Yes. I kind of always have to call it the Yes Project because, it's always every album, the person will change. And then there's so much drama between all the players and who's mad at whom. And
that's the name of the album, Drama.
Apparently so, right? And appropriately so, I guess. It's just yet another example of who's not getting along with whom and, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, shall we go on to the next song? Hold on. Kind of a cool song. Not one of my favorites, but...
Yeah, actually, speaking of Asia, this song sounds like a song from Asia.
It does.
Except I love the back end of it. It's like from Asia.
Justice to the left, got some cool parts for sure.
Justice to the right. Speak when you are spoken.
This to be a heavy song. This is a Raven song.
Yeah.
He just wanted it. He wanted it to be like as heavy as possible. That part. And then there's the counterpoint melody in there. Sing-along chorus, John Anderson. The vocals on this album are tremendous.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to admit, the vocals. The vocals on this album are just some of the fattest vocal production that you'll ever hear.
Platonic eye, how they drown in incomplete capacity, strangest of them all. When the fear it calls, how we drown in stylistic audacity, charge the common ground. Round and round and round, we live in gravity shake. We shake so hard, how we laugh so loud. When we reach, we believe in eternity.
Yeah, that's the coolest part of the song right there. And they're cosmic. Who knows what he's really saying, but it's beautiful and positive. I love watching these guys live with John Anderson. He's just he's like the quintessential new age guru at the head of this fat, orchestral rock sound that just transports you Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You got the left brain and the right brain together. One of the cool things about Yes, man. You know, but John by himself is awful woo-woo.
Yeah.
Kind of goes too far that way.
Yeah, that was a great thing about him and Chris. Chris,
Yeah.
real solid guy.
The scientist. Yeah. Technical master. Yes. And John is with the right brain and left brain together, you know. And they were choir boys together back in middle school or something like that. So
They sing like they've been singing together.
yeah, oh yeah, they always, you know, the one album where they did not play together was Drama, which interestingly, you know, you and I kind of both agree is the best Yes album, but every other Yes album, Chris and John singing together is one of the coolest things about the Yes project, right? And you know, when Steve Howe is involved, he's another kind of the left brain or the scientist of the guitar, you know,
Farmer of the guitar, yeah. Who didn't read any music, by the way, but that's another album.
And yeah, he's the farmer. I like that too. He's got the kind of down home. He plays the pedal steel, kind of gives it the country sort of feel sometimes. You know, the earthy. But he's a scientist. You know, he's like an agriculture. He is like the scientific farmer of the guitar. Where Chris is kind of the cosmic scientist. He's like an astrophysicist of the bass, you know, and then and then John is just like the new age guru, kind of just floating on top of everyone, just like sprinkling stardust everywhere. So,
what's neat about him playing bass and having Trevor Horn produce is that Trevor Horn's a bass player.
That's right. Yes.
And he was a Chris Squire, you know, he idolized Chris Squire. So, you know, Chris Squire's bass is always, but it continues to be a big, you know, driving force on this album.
Yeah, kind of mixed up, you know, and I think, Trevor always made sure that there was like an octaver or something or on the bass that made the sound to where it was really clear that you could hear what Chris is playing, because it always wasn't just buried, you know, at the very bottom end of
Actually, that's part of
spectrum.
Chris's effect setup.
Oh, okay.
I was watching a video on him alone where he was talking about some of the things during a lot of his stuff, and he was playing effects, and he was showing things that he had used on this album, and a lot of it was harmonizer. We'd have octaves and things like that in there as well. Okay. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I think the thing about this album, it's really a teamwork between Chris and Trevor. Yep. You know, that's a driving force right there, because they were both really enthusiastic. They were both really enthusiastic about this, whatever's going on right now here.
Yeah.
You know, let's experiment.
Let's use the technology.
Right.
Which was one of the things that apparently Tony Kaye just was not into. Interestingly enough, the keyboard player
Trevor Rabin was.
Yes, right. Yes. Who was really a guitar player, but he was into the technology, and so he would use whatever.
He was also a keyboard player too. He was a multi-instrumentalist.
Okay, you know. Well,
he's really good keyboard player too. So, so yeah, you know, interesting blend, man. I mean, it's just a very strong album. You know, again, I don't think that wasn't my favorite song. This one is, you know. This one and Owner of Lonely Heart, I think, are my couple of my favorites on this album. And of course, Leave It. Such a beautiful sound here.
That sitar was played by somebody else.
You can fool yourself. Oh wait, really? Is it really a sitar? I just thought it was a guitar that was processed. Oh. Well, it sounds like a real sitar. It can happen. The bass here, the melody, the lyrics. You can mend the wires. You can feed the soul apart. You reach.
It can happen to you. It can happen to me. It can happen to everyone involved.
Beautiful song. Yeah, I've heard it on the radio. I did hear it on the radio back then.
It's a constant fight of kind.
Love the echo into there.
You pushing the needle to the
The
right.
big piano. This sounds like Jeff Downs. This sounds like Ron.
No substitute, you're born, you're dead.
But it's not Jeff Downs.
Who knows who really played it?
Well, it's written by Chris Squire. Chris Squire can play the piano.
I think it's Raven.
Such a cool sound, man. The bass. Brilliant, man. Brilliant. Beautiful sound.
This word I like. We architects of life. A soul, a sign. Developing words that linger. Fields of green through open eyes. It's for us to see. Look out! Look down! Look out! Look around! So look up! Look down! There's a crazy world outside. We're running out to the light. It can happen to you. It can happen to me. It can happen to
I love the beat, man. What Alan White is doing.
it can happen today. As it happens everywhere. As it happens,
And then they continue on here, the big guitar chorus.
nothing happens to nowhere and nowhere.
God, oh boy, you had nothing better to
There's somebody speaks right there.
That's from an Oscar Wilde play.
Oh, really? Really?
Look up, look down. There's a crazy world outside. We're running out to the light.
Guitar.
It can happen to you. It can happen to me. It can happen to everyone eventually. As you happen to see, it will happen to me. Nothing happens to nowhere and nowhere.
So they're from their chicks from the beginning, first Trevor Raven. I guess that could be Chris Squire. Oh, the vocals on that one, man. Just so fat. Such a beautiful song. Oh my god.
Supposedly Chris Squire, when it was a cinema song, he was singing. He sung that version. That's what I had read as well. I never heard that one, but so that was kind of a Chris Squire driven piece, really.
I believe it. It's just beautiful bass lines, the melodies, all the lyrics and the harmonies. I mean, just what a joy.
Arrangement changes and stuff like that.
Yep. Yep, exactly. Yes, just the classic. Okay, how can we change this up, and how can we make it cool in yet another way? I mean, that's what this whole album seems like. Okay, let's just do whatever the heck we can to make this music as cool as possible, and sing alongable as possible, and with all your friends, singing different harmony parts together. It's just, my God, just such a joy.
Speaking of changes,
another cool song. This is another one of my favorites.
Oh, I did on that little thing with Chris Squire interviewing him. He played 8-string bass on this.
This song?
Yeah, and he tuned the top 2 in fifths.
Oh, no wonder.
Like a 12-string guitar, and he tuned in octaves.
Listen to what he's playing here.
Yeah. Those top 2 strings are tuned in fifths.
Love it.
So you know what I'm saying? Like normal tuning, like second string.
I'm always trying to figure out what's 7, a measure of 7, and then a measure like 10 or something. That sounds like Jeff Downs to me right there. On the piano. I mean, every time I hear it, I see Jeff Downs playing it,
Well, it's another one of those songs that Raven wrote for the band. I think White created this section. Alan White created this.
Oh, what a cool rhythm, man. I haven't been able to count it. It's a cool rhythm. I mean, it's nice to fall into this like laid back groove, Raven singing.
Moving through some changes. I'll never be the
Now this, his voice, I like his voice in harmony, but when he sings, it sounds like
Typical. Nothing to say.
typical 80s
It's smooth.
rock.
It's smooth.
Smooth. Yeah, very.
No characteristic.
Sounds like it could be, not Foreigner, but like Night Ranger.
We actually went to rehearsal. Like a song later, inspired it.
I believe it. I get that Foreigner vibe.
Changing places, just settle to the ground. Capitalize on this good fortune. One word can bring you round. Changes.
It's still a cool song.
Look into the mirror. See no happiness. All the warmth I gave
And Chris Squire playing the fifths.
turn to emptiness. The love we had was gone. Love we used to share left me here believing in love that wasn't there. Changing places. Put yourself to the ground. Went to the wise where you get what's coming. One word can bring you round. Changes. But when I look into your eyes, I'm trying to find out how. There's no way to save it now. And everything I feel changes.
Little sample.
Keep looking for changes. Keep looking for changes.
Here's the change coming up here after the guitar melody.
much jealous hearts. Only through the changes come. Change, changing places. Root yourself to the ground. Capitalize on this good fortune. One word can bring you round. Changes. One road to loneliness. It's always the same. One road to happiness. It's calling your name. Change, changing places. Changes. Root yourself to the ground. Capitalize on this good fortune. One word can bring you round. Changes. Change, changing places. Changes. Root yourself to the ground. Word to the wise when you get what's coming. One word can bring you round. Changes.
Tight. Tight. Oh my God. That one's intense, man. A lot of energy in that one.
Yes.
Great. So on the record, that was the end of side one. So cool way to end the album. You know, bum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum. Okay, album's over. Flip it over. Flip it over. So yeah, when this record came out, I was working at Record Bar in the mall record store,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I mean, I played this album a lot in that store, and I'd hear that bum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum, you know, and all right, flip it over, because side B does the so here's the title track to Cinema, the band, I think. All right.
Originally, this was a 20-minute piece.
Was it? Oh my God. I can't imagine. It's so intense for the, 2 minutes or something that it is, as it is. Yeah, maybe it's not even 2 minutes, a minute and a half or something, but it's freaking intense. And I've never been able to, Best rock instrumental performance, yep. Imagine that. I've never been able to count it, though. And Alan White just shreds on this one, man.
This is too, really. They opened the show this way.
Oh, really? I believe it. I believe it. Yeah, great way to just come on, and let's just play as loud as we can. Let's get warmed up. But I think Alan White is a totally underrated drummer, underappreciated. Right? Oh yeah. The dude shreds all the time. You know, he's not as flashy as Bill Bruford, but he's solid.
And go into this.
And then they would come into this.
No, really.
Yes, I believe it. This is
Watch
a
a
cool
live
song
version.
now, right?
They pull
Okay.
Leave It Off. Pretty incredible live.
I can feel no sense of measure, no illusions as we take refuge in young man's pleasure, breaking down the dreams we make real.
When I first heard this, I was like, what?
It's a masterpiece.
Yeah! It is, man. Right, Raven playing that funky guitar lick there.
One down, one to go, another town, one more show. Downtown, giving away.
I think his voice sounds best.
No
Yes,
home
yes.
to take your place.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
We have the same intrigue as the Carter Kings. Two down, there you go.
John takes this version.
Knock down the diggity down, better lay your claim. Get home, you're not alone. Just throw out the danger zone. Be there to show your face on another dreamy day.
The bass line. How many tracks and vocals did they do for this on? Oh, here we go. Great groove, man. One more time.
One down, one to go. Another town, one more show. One down, one to go. Another town, one more show.
Oh my God. Just- I mean, that is a song like no other in the history of music. There's nothing so freaking fat and grooving, man. With all the, how many tracks of vocals do you think they did on that? 60?
Yeah, I can see that.
Something.
There was something I read where
Right?
they had laid down the drums and everything, the backing tracks, put the vocals in, and they lost. I don't know how they do it. They lost the click track somehow, and they had to kind of start over. But they had the basic vocals, and they had that's what it was. They had the tracks with they had recorded live in synclavier. I'm sorry, they had recorded live in synclavier and had a lot of those vocals in there programmed.
Okay.
And they lost other things, and so they had to build off of that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it was kind of like
So
it
they
was kind of
said,
like a
well-
mistake that created the masterpiece as usual.
That's isn't that a way that, I mean, that is a thing. How do you, that's a very Brian Eno thing, to take what is given to you and run with it, you know?
Yeah.
And very Zen. Let's work with what we have. Yes, we've lost half of our tracks or whatever, but you know, what we have here still sounds cool. Let's keep going with that.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Take the path you're left with. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's very it kind of reminds me of the kind. There's a kind of Zen art where with pottery, if the pottery breaks in the firing, what they do is actually they highlight the cracks with gold, and fill those cracks with gold, and it becomes the highlight of the pot.
Oh.
As opposed to saying, "Oh, this pot is broken, let's throw it away." Let's actually make that the highlight, and fill it with gold, and that becomes, much richer. It could never have happened without, by planning it,
Right.
So,
right.
Cool. So to me, that is the single coolest track on this album. It's worth the price of the whole album. Then they did a couple of remixes of that one, like 12-inch.
But like you said, that's like one of the coolest single tracks created. Period.
Period.
Whatever album it's on, or whatever band does it.
Exactly. Just like, so the vocals, we talked about the vocals on this album already.
Right.
Just being phenomenal. But this, it was meant to be. It must have been meant to be that they lost whatever tracks that they lost on that one.
Right.
Because the vocals are the highlight, and this is the highlight of the album.
And actually, you should see the live version of that, because that blew me. In fact, I had to watch about 3 different videos of live, because there's several videos that came out during those tours. And Alan White started out playing 2 pads on the main part of it, and during that little bridge section, dun, 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 with the guitar and everything, he switched over to his drum kit and did the rest of the song in his drum kit. All 5 of them were singing.
Oh, cool.
And when you hear
even Alan White,
Alan was singing, and Kay was singing, and so all 5 of them were singing, and it was kind of a neat little. I don't know if they did any extra mixes. Who knows what they might have done on post-production, but it sounded like they really pulled it off. It was really well done.
Right.
And like I said, they did Cinema. Cinema started the show, and they went right into Leave It.
Yep.
So it was
makes perfect sense. I love how they did that on the album. I can't imagine breaking that in the live. It was just such a fantastic, Cinema into Leave It,
Right.
One piece, yes, it's the 2 pieces on the album, Cinema's track 5, Leave It is track 6, but really they go together totally. Okay, good.
It's exhausting.
Well, I know. I'm having fun. I'm sweating here, but that means I'm having fun. So next song, again, is not one of my favorites. It's still got some cool parts.
Our song.
Yeah, written by John Anderson, Chris Squire, Trevor Rabin, Alan White. This is a cool melody. There's the melody that was hinted at in the keyboard is now fat in the guitar. These licks here. Classic Yes guitar bass lick. So they're singing about it here. Elton John has a song called Our Song. Totally different. Chris good music is. But saying it only in a way only he can say, man. It always flies under the radar to me. I've never really known the lyrics. I've never looked at the lyrics. I've caught a few of the lyrics here and there.
There's not much depth
such
to
a tight, right? It's a tight little kind of a pop rock song,
right?
That yes, it's fast and tight, and it's got John singing these crazy cosmic lyrics about how beautiful music is and how you need to treat it right, and it'll serve you. And but cool song, but yeah, just not one of my ones. It's not. There's so many great songs on this album, so this is a good one. Actually, I think this is my least favorite song on the album.
Oh, really? I kind of like this one. This is the one that Raven wrote about going to rehearse with a foreigner. And they were rehearsing in Harlem. And he was taken to the wrong part of Harlem. So that inspired this song.
Okay. I could never play it. One of the reasons I like it. This was rough, man. I mean, the bass is that sound, right? And man, he's like got a totally saturated on his bass amp, you know. It's like he's tuned his bass down, his low bass string to E to the lower note or something. Or maybe he's got his octave pedal playing the lower octave of the bass on this one instead of the higher octave. I love this lick here. part of the song just because it's so fucking bad. I mean, it's slow and fucking loud as hell. Raven's letting it rip, you know. What the hell is he doing? What is he doing here? Revving his motors. Fucking revving a motorcycle or something.
I like this. This is the hardest song on the album.
Yeah. This part, it is. Are they gonna wind it up here?
Speaking of, so I was thinking about, and you mentioned the Bob Marley reference maybe in the lyrics. This is back, I don't know if I showed this earlier to Trevor Horn at SARM Studios where they recorded this. This is a 1984 photo from then. And there's a synclavier, which I use a lot on this album as well, right? The keyboard right there in front of you. But this studio, Marley recorded at this studio.
Oh, did he?
Bob Marley recorded at the studio the same time I think Rolling Stones recorded at the studio. Queen
Late 70s.
Night at the Opera, and they did part of the vocals for Bohemian Rhapsody here. In fact,
really?
a couple of the engineers, Gary Langan, who's one of the chief engineers on this, was a tape operator during the recording of Bohemian Rhapsody. You know, in fact, he was the one that he became a tape editor guru.
Deluxe. Yeah. Okay. Tape.
Yeah.
Tape though.
Yeah. But I mean, you think about.
Well, I mean, before samplers
right.
and
think about
before digital recording.
How even more technical that would have to be.
Yes, exactly. The Razor.
And it's Gary Langan who worked on this album as the chief engineer. Him and the guy who programmed the Fairlight that was used tremendously amounts on this album, Jonathan Jezelik. Someone will tell me how it's pronounced somewhere. And him and Trevor and Gary Langan started Art of Noise. In fact, during the recording of this album, 90125, they took Alan White's drums, put them into the Fairlight, and they used those drums to create the first single that Art of Noise put out within the next year, called Beatbox.
That.
So this album was the origin of Art of Noise, and Art of Noise became the key factor behind Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Yep. The whole ZTT. What was that?
Yeah, ZTT.
Trevor Horn's record, the Zang Tung Tung or something like that. It was the Trevor Horn's record label.
And ABC was a big production used on because of that. And
well, I guess Trevor Horn. This really was his leap into superstardom because
super producer. Yeah,
he was. Yeah, as a producer,
right.
Yes. I mean, where he's always been since.
Pet Shop Boys was another big thing that he did with
project of his.
Yeah.
Yep. So he exactly. Before this, he was. He started with the Buggles, bass player and I guess producer, but mainly bass player singer with Jeff Downes, and then of course Drama with Jeff Downes, and he joined Yes for that the previous album, Yes album,
right.
And then for this one, for some reason, kind of early on in the, I think they brought him in as a musician at first, but then pretty early on, Trevor was like, Horn was like, I think I want to just produce. I think that he realized that between Trevor Rabin and Chris Squire and Alan White, that they had some solid stuff going already.
Right.
And he just wanted to make it sound. He wanted to bring it into the modern sound with this.
He wanted to hang in the studio. He wanted to be.
Yeah, he wanted to use the studio as his instrument, and that's really what he was known for after this album, and because of this album, I think. So, Trevor Horn, one of the best producers ever. I think he just released last year, a couple of years ago, a remix of this album, or something about this album where he totally redid all the songs, a remix or something. I have to Google that sometime. he brought in all the multi tracks, and then he used Pro Tools or something to redo it.
Yeah,
which is what he really wanted and should have been using back at this time.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, the Fairlight and the Synclavier were his Pro Tools back then.
Yes,
in that way. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Well, one thing to learn from this album, going from the cinema stages to bringing in John Anderson to you create songs, and that doesn't mean that's the way they are. I mean, you can find earlier versions of these songs, and they're nothing like what this ended up as. And so, just because you create something, that's not the way it is. And
I kind of liken it. Yeah, I kind of liken it to a movie where you start off with a script, right? And that's kind of the bones, the skeleton of but then it gets filled out by the director and the actors and the cinematographer and the art director and the set designers.
And stages and stages and stages and stages and months and months and months and
rewrites and reading. Let's take this scene 25 times and change the way you say this, and I'll change the camera angle, or
And on albums like this, because this happened, well, then you go this direction, like you were saying earlier. The kind of like the Brian Eno effects, like. Oh, this sounded good here.
Where are we now?
Let's do that.
Yeah. And let's hang with this one.
And you had Rabin's lyrics, and you had Squire doing lyrics, and you had Trevor Horn doing lyrics, and then you have Anderson coming in and doing lyrics, and things just progress. And
who knows?
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it's such a beautiful mixture of all of these guys in such an amazing way. So I'm glad we've done this album. Again, it's not my favorite Yes album, but it's probably my second or third favorite Yes album.
Well, it's very influential, or very dynamic.
Yes,
in
it
that
is.
change is like here's everything's going this way, and all of a sudden now it's going a totally different direction in the whole
and that was the part
music world.
Yeah, that was the Trevor Horn and the digital revolution of the recording and digital music production, I guess. Really this was one of those key albums that was a pivot point for the whole music industry, where, yes, there had been some samplers and kind of stuff before this, and late 70s synthesizers and that kind of stuff. But at this point, Trevor Horn really was like, okay, let's change the whole, let's twist music production. So now it becomes a kaleidoscope instead of a telescope or whatever.
But there is that. And yet, when you listen to what Trevor, and we're going to get to some Trevor Horn productions down the road on other bands and other things. But Chris Squire and Alan White and Trevor Rabin and John Anderson's, their involvement at this was taking what they knew how to do so well and putting it with that. And it makes this just like a huge piece of art and piece of science and everything.
I don't think this album would have been so influential and seminal, to the digital music revolution if it hadn't been, the inputs into that digital recording were each incredibly phenomenal musicians, and then bringing it all together and making it into a completely new sound was really Horn's kind of contribution, I think. So,
well, let's finish it out, shall we?
So great album so far, but this is another
there it is. Like, they could have done that for another 45 seconds or so, and I think it would have been perfect.
Kind of little that angelic tack. Well, I mean, it's just like Awaken.
Yeah.
Right. Their masterpiece from Going for the One. Their 20-minute, magnum opus from Going for the One. I go back into YouTube and watch them do that live every year or so, and it's just every time I went. And we're gonna listen to Going for the One, the album. At some point, and one of the main reasons was because of Awaken, and it's a Yes fans favorite and everything. But yes, it's because part of it is just because it's just so, like that little tag right there at the end. It kind of starts off that way and ends that way. the kind of these universal truths, you
Right.
know, that bring us all back and take us away. And for the moment, we can hang together and jam and have a great time. And when we're done, we'll kind of return back to the cosmic, you know, well of souls or whatever, heaven. So, you know, yeah, such a great combination of classic old Yes, you know, new sounds produced in new ways, old sounds produced in new ways, mixed up in a way that has never been done before.
Right. Very, very experimental, but yet pop is like it's like the combination of an experimental album and yet a pop album. All the same, you know, it was all meant to be sold. It was meant to get to people. It wasn't meant to throw off people. It was meant to get to people, and yet at the same time, it was highly experimental too.
Right.
Right.
And so it did. It reached a lot of people. Yeah. This is the best-selling Yes album.
Best-selling Yes single. The best, you know, most people know Yes because of this.
From Owner of a Lonely Heart and this album. Exactly. Yep, exactly. So yeah, well done. Amazing album. So I'm glad that we listened to this one. You know, but there's so many other great Yes things as well. Right. So we're kind of just getting started.
Yes Project Mountain, as you say.
Yes, the Yes Project. There is a mound of albums that we can listen to and dip into for sure.
So we dig from this into these guys. Speaking of project, speaking of many forms and fashions, this band, Roxy Music,
the Brian Ferry Project, of which Eno was part of it early on.
Right.
And a lot of kind of session musicians along the way. Andy McKay, I think, is the sax player that was Ferry's partner on this album.
Right.
So, beautiful album. We're going to have a great time listening to that one next week. So, come back and join us again. Anyway, he is Del.
I am Del. And he is Keith.
And we are Renjeaux. We listen to cool albums. And we will see you the next time. We love you.
Bye.
Be good. Be safe.